Imagine walking into your boss's office tomorrow morning, knowing that if they treat you with disrespect or if they ask you to compromise your values, you can simply smile, hand in your resignation, and walk out the door without a single ounce of panic. That is not a fantasy reserved exclusively for the ultra-wealthy. It is the exact psychological shift that happens when you cross a very specific financial threshold: $50,000. Most discussions about personal finance focus on the extremes. We're told to celebrate the first $1,000 saved, or we're told to obsess over the legendary $1,000,000 net worth. But almost no one talks about the strange, quiet, and fundamentally transformative space that exists right around the $50,000 mark. To understand why the specific number changes your brain, we have to look at how our minds process security versus how they process power. When you have a small emergency fund, say $5,000 or $10,000, you're playing what behavioral scientists call a defensive game. You're playing not to lose. That money exists to keep the wolves away from the door. It is there to fix the broken appliance, cover a sudden medical bill, or keep you afloat for a couple of months if things go sideways. It brings peace of mind, absolutely. But it is a reactive peace of mind. You are still ultimately at the mercy of your current circumstances. You are safe, but you're not truly free. But when that balance hits $50,000, something fascinating happens to your internal wiring. You stop playing defense, and you naturally, almost automatically, start playing offense. At $50,000, money stops being a shield and starts becoming a lever. Think about the sheer timeline expansion that happens at this stage. For the average person, $50,000 represents anywhere from 6 months to a full year of complete living expenses. It means that if society completely shut down for you tomorrow, you could sit on your porch, read books, drink coffee, and figure out your next move for an entire orbit around the sun without needing a single dime of outside income. When your brain realizes it has a year of pure runway, your entire relationship with time changes. You stop making decisions based on what you need to survive the next 30 days, and you start making decisions based on where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. This cognitive shift alters how you carry yourself in the world, particularly in your career. The corporate world has a very keen sense for desperation. When an employer knows you need this exact paycheck to pay your rent on the first of the month, the balance of power is entirely in their favor. You are far more likely to accept extra work without extra pay, tolerate toxic management, and stay quiet during meetings. But when you have $50,000 sitting quietly in a high-yield account, you possess what is politely referred to as walk-away power. You don't have to be arrogant or combative. In fact, people with this level of savings are often the calmest people in the room. That calmness comes from knowing that your presence in that job is a choice, not a sentence. Strangely enough, this exact vibe of independence often makes you more valuable. You negotiate from a position of strength. You can say no to bad projects. You can pitch bold ideas because you aren't terrified of the immediate financial consequences of failure. It is one of the great paradoxes of modern life. Having enough money to leave a job often makes you the exact kind of person who gets promoted and paid more to stay. Beyond the workplace, crossing this threshold completely rewrites how you view consumer culture. When you are struggling or just getting by, spending money on luxury items or status symbols is often a coping mechanism. It's a way to prove to yourself and to the world that you are doing okay, even when you don't feel okay inside. But when you actually have $50,000 in liquid capital, the desire to look rich often evaporates. You realize that the greatest luxury money can buy isn't a European sports car or a designer bag. The greatest luxury money can buy is anonymity, options, and psychological sovereignty. You find a deep, quiet satisfaction in wearing an ordinary t-shirt and driving a reliable, paid-off vehicle, knowing exactly what your balance sheet looks like. The need for external validation drops because the internal validation is incredibly secure. This is also the phase where you transition into what psychologists call an investor identity. Up until this point, you likely viewed money as something to be consumed or stored away for safety, but at $50,000, you begin to look at cash as an employee. You start doing the math. You realize that $50,000 invested intelligently can generate thousands of dollars a year in completely passive income or market growth without you lifting a finger. Suddenly, you stop looking at purchases in terms of their absolute price tag, and you start looking at them in terms of opportunity cost. You don't just see a $500 weekend trip, you see the compound interest that $500 could generate over the next decade. You begin to speak the language of assets and liabilities rather than just income and expenses. Now, getting to this point is undeniably the hardest part of the financial journey. The climb from $0 to $50,000 can feel like a grueling, unrewarding slog. When you save your first $10,000, you feel a massive sigh of relief. But as you push through $20,000, $30,000, and $40,000, the initial excitement wears off. You are in the boring middle. You are sacrificing immediate gratification, and your lifestyle isn't visibly changing. You aren't buying a mansion or flying private, you're just watching numbers tick upward on a screen. Most people give up during this middle stretch because they don't understand the invisible transformation taking place beneath the surface. They think they are just hoarding cash, but you aren't just hoarding cash. You are building a psychological launch pad. The habits required to accumulate $50,000, consistency, emotional regulation, long-term vision, and the ability to delay gratification are the exact same skills required to build true wealth. The money itself is fantastic, but the software update your brain undergoes to get that money is what actually matters. Once you reach this milestone, the momentum shifts completely. Going from $50,000 to $100,000 rarely takes as long or feels as painful as going from $0 to $50,000. Not only because compound interest begins to lend a hand, but because your identity has permanently shifted. You are no longer someone trying to save money. You are an allocator of capital. You are someone who prioritizes freedom over friction. When you look at the world through the lens of $50,000, the horizon opens up. You don't see a landscape filled with financial traps and terrifying emergencies. You see a landscape filled with choices, calculated risks, and opportunities waiting to be seized. It completely alters how you sleep, how you breathe, and how you design your life.